Challenge the viewer's mind. Have you ever wondered why the man who rarely reaches out, who doesn't flood your phone with messages, who never says "I miss you" first, ends up being the one you can't stop thinking about? It's not his words, it's not his actions, it's the silence between them, the tension, the distance, the way he gives so little, yet you crave so much. We've been told that love is about giving, about showing up, about being available. But what if that's not what actually pulls you in? What if the real attraction isn't in emotional closeness, but in emotional absence? Set the stage. You've probably met someone like this. He didn't chase you, didn't try to impress you. He was there, and yet, somehow out of reach. You told yourself you shouldn't care, but you kept checking your phone. You kept replaying the last thing he said. You kept wondering if maybe, just maybe, there's something deeper beneath that silence. But here's the thing. Have you ever wondered why their silence is louder than any words? Why the absence of attention feels more intoxicating than constant praise? Here's the truth. This isn't just about one man. It's about a psychological pattern that runs deeper than we realize. A powerful mix of emotional distance, self-control, and strategic silence that triggers the brain in ways most people never even notice. It's not random, it's not luck, it's designed, even if unconsciously. In this video, we're going to decode exactly why emotionally unavailable men are so attractive. Not from a place of guessing, but through the lens of psychology, attachment theory, and yes, Stoic power. And most importantly, we'll break down how you can build that same kind of quiet intensity, not to manipulate, but to stand in your own power, without chasing, without explaining, without losing yourself. Let's begin. 1. The Scarcity Principle, emotional value through rarity. Let's get something straight. The brain doesn't value what's always available. It values what feels scarce. And in relationships, scarcity doesn't mean absence. It means emotional restraint. You've seen this happen. There's one person who's always texting, always initiating, always checking in. It feels nice, until it starts to feel predictable. You know exactly when they'll respond. You know exactly how they feel. There's no emotional tension, no mental space to fill. Now compare that to the man who doesn't respond right away, who says very little, who keeps his emotions close to the chest. Suddenly, your mind begins to amplify his presence. By trying to fill in the blanks he never gave you. This isn't magic, it's psychology. Your brain is wired for something called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The reward doesn't come on a fixed schedule, it comes unpredictably, which means every time he does show interest or drops a small signal of attention, it hits harder. The dopamine spike is stronger. The brain says, "Finally, I got it." And now you're hooked, not because he's doing more, but because he's doing less, on purpose or not. This is the scarcity principle in action. What is rare feels valuable. What is predictable becomes background noise. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Being emotionally available 24/7 feels good to give, but it rarely attracts. Because people don't crave what's always accessible. They crave what they have to earn. So how do you use this principle with intention? You pull back, not out of manipulation, but out of self-awareness. You stop explaining yourself all the time. You stop over-clarifying every feeling. You stop rushing to reply just to prove you care. Because genuine presence doesn't require constant expression. Instead, you let your emotional energy become something selective, something people have to slow down to experience. You become a person whose attention is earned, not assumed. And here's the paradox. When people feel they have to earn access to your emotional world, they actually treat it with more care. They respect your space. They listen closer. They show up differently. Because suddenly, your silence has weight, your presence has gravity, and your emotional availability becomes a privilege, not a default. And that is what makes you unforgettable. 2. Mystery over availability. The power of uncertainty. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you couldn't stop thinking about someone because you couldn't figure them out? That's the power of mystery. It lives in the unknown. And the unknown is where the human mind becomes obsessed. We are wired for closure. The brain hates open loops. It needs answers, clarity, resolution. But when it can't get them, it doesn't give up. It spirals. It replays conversations. It analyzes tone. It imagines reasons behind silence. And this is exactly what a mysterious man triggers, not through manipulation, but by refusing to be an open book. Most people overshare. They tell you what they ate, what they feel, what they plan. They make themselves easy to decode, and therefore easy to forget. But the man who says less, who gives you fragments instead of full stories, who keeps his inner world undisclosed, he becomes a puzzle you can't solve, and your mind starts solving it anyway. Every delayed response, a possible meaning, every short reply, a test, every glance that lingers for just a second longer than expected, fuel for your imagination. This is how mystery works. It doesn't give, it invites. It invites projection, curiosity, anticipation. And here's the truth. Mystery doesn't mean faking silence. It means holding something back with purpose. So how do you create this? By realizing that your presence isn't meant to be fully understood by everyone. You don't have to tell people how you feel all the time. You don't need to give your backstory in one conversation. You don't need to text back with your entire thought process. Instead, you say less. You pause longer. You make people wonder, not because you're hiding something, but because you respect your own depth enough to protect it. You let others earn the right to know you, layer by layer, not all at once, because when people don't have all the pieces, they start looking harder, they lean in, they invest, and that emotional investment, it creates attachment, not to your words, but to the unknown you represent. So remember this, what people understand too quickly, they forget just as fast. But what they can't figure out stays with them. 3. Detachment equals inner control minus emotional independence as power. There's a misconception that emotionally unavailable men are cold, that they don't feel, that they're numb, distant, or broken. But here's the truth. They're not cold. They're just not attached. They feel emotions, just like everyone else. They simply refuse to attach their identity to those emotions, or worse, to outcomes they can't control. That's where real power begins, not in shutting down, but in staying centered, even when the world pulls at your heartstrings. And it's this detachment, this calm, internal steadiness, that creates such a magnetic presence. Think about it. When someone needs nothing from you, not validation, not reassurance, not attention, you automatically respect them more, because they're not chasing, they're not desperate, they're not performing, they're just whole. And when a person like that chooses to be with you, it doesn't feel like luck. It feels like you've been selected, chosen, seen through a lens that's rare and deliberate. That's why detachment is attractive, because it flips the dynamic. Instead of trying to be loved, this person chooses to love, on their terms, from a place of strength, not lack. And here's where most people go wrong. They confuse detachment with disinterest. But true detachment is full of presence, just without the neediness. So how do you build this kind of power? You start by becoming comfortable in your own solitude, not just being alone, but actually liking it, sitting in silence, processing without texting, not reacting the second something triggers you. You stop rushing to fix, to prove, to explain. You stop chasing closure in conversations that were never meant to give it. You stop acting out of emotional impulse. Instead, you build emotional muscle. You let the wave pass before responding. You give your mind a second before your mouth moves. And slowly, you become the calm center in the chaos. That's when people start to feel it. That quiet intensity. That energy that says, I don't need to be here, I choose to be. And that's what makes people pay attention. Not because you're loud, but because you're anchored. Remember this, the person who doesn't chase controls the pace, and the one who doesn't attach commands the connection. 4. Selective vulnerability, depth. With control. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it loses all its power when it's overused. The truth is, we live in a world that glorifies oversharing. Be real, be open, tell your story. And while openness has its place, constant exposure makes your emotions lose their gravity. When you tell everyone everything, nothing feels special, nothing feels earned. But when a man who rarely speaks about his past suddenly shares a quiet, raw moment, it lands like an emotional earthquake. Why? Because it's earned, because it breaks the pattern, because it shows you a door that's usually locked, and that glimpse into his inner world feels intimate, powerful, unforgettable. That's the art of selective vulnerability. It's not about hiding. It's about choosing when, how, and to whom you reveal truth. It's not emotional avoidance. It's emotional precision. Because here's what most people miss. Vulnerability without boundaries isn't honesty. It's leakage. It becomes about needing to be understood instead of choosing to connect. The strongest men, the ones who hold power in silence, aren't emotionally robotic. They feel everything, but they filter. They protect the sacred parts of their story, and they only let others in when it serves something real. So how do you practice this? Start by observing your urge to share. When you want to tell someone about your past, your pain, your struggle, pause. Ask yourself, is this person safe? Is this moment right? Is this story mine to give, or am I offering it to feel seen? Then choose with intent. Reveal only what carries weight. Reveal only what reflects strength in your scars, not just the wound. Because when you speak less, but say more, people listen differently. They lean in. They respect the depth you choose to share, rather than expecting access to it. And the paradox? The less often you open up, the more impact it has when you do. So remember, powerful vulnerability isn't about being raw all the time. It's about being real, strategically. You're not building walls, you're building a gate, and only those who've earned it get the key. The illusion of winning them, when being chosen feels like a prize. Here's something uncomfortable. People value what makes them feel accomplished, not what makes them feel comfortable. And emotionally unavailable men, they create a dynamic where connection feels like an achievement, not a given. It's subtle. They don't shower you with compliments. They don't offer validation on a silver platter. They don't need to be liked. And that very indifference makes you want their approval even more. Why? Because your mind reframes the situation. If I can make him love me, that must mean I'm special. It becomes a game. a challenge, an invisible competition you didn't even realize you entered. And the crazy part, they never promised anything. They didn't lie. They didn't lead you on. They simply existed in a space of emotional self-control. And let your projections do the rest. This is the illusion of winning them. You mistake their attention for a prize because they rarely give it. And when they do, it feels like you've been chosen from the crowd. Your dopamine spikes, your attachment grows, and suddenly you're the one chasing the connection. But here's the truth. It's not about them. It's about the way your mind interprets scarcity. It's about the meaning you attach to limited access. It's about your own desire to feel exceptional. Now flip that perspective. What if you became the one who doesn't need to be liked, who doesn't offer instant emotional approval, who doesn't explain yourself to earn validation? What if people had to earn you, to prove they were worthy of your attention, of your calm, of your energy? That's how the game reverses. Not by playing mind tricks, but by removing emotional desperation from your system. And when someone does earn your attention, when you finally open up, engage, connect, it feels powerful because you could have chosen not to. That's what creates presence, not your availability, but the perception that your presence means something. People don't want what's easy. They want what makes them feel like they've achieved something real. And if you become that, they don't walk away. They hold on tighter, not because of what you said, but because of what they felt they earned. 6. Self-sufficiency is magnetic. Emotional independence is irresistible. There's a certain type of man who walks into a room and doesn't need anything from it. He's not looking for attention. He's not hoping to be liked. He's not scanning for validation. He's simply there, whole, anchored, unbothered. And that presence, that quiet, grounded, emotionally self-contained energy is magnetic. You see, most people walk through life emotionally hungry, craving connection, chasing approval, yearning to be seen, chosen, loved. But the man who doesn't need anything from others to feel complete, he becomes the one others seek. Not because he's cold, but because he's complete. That's self-sufficiency. And it's not about being detached from people. It's about not being dependent on them for your emotional balance. He doesn't react out of loneliness. He doesn't beg for attention through over-communication. He's not addicted to closeness. He can be close, but he doesn't collapse into you. He can be intimate, but he never loses himself. And here's the secret. That's the kind of energy people respect. It feels solid, safe, unshakable. So how do you build that level of independence? Start with this mindset shift. Your emotional state is your responsibility, no one else's. Don't wait for someone to make you feel seen. Don't depend on a text to feel important. Don't outsource your peace to people who may or may not understand you. Instead, create rituals that ground you, moments of stillness where you remember who you are, systems of self-regulation that kick in before you spiral, and most of all, a standard: if I give you access to me, it's because I'm choosing to, not because I need to. You become a fortress, not with walls, but with clarity. You don't chase, you attract. You don't explain, you express. And when people come close, they sense it. This isn't a man seeking completion. This is a man who's already whole. That's what makes you different, not your looks, not your status, not your charm, but your ability to be at peace with yourself. So much so that others want to be near you just to feel what that peace feels like. The final shift. So now you see it. It was never about how much he texted, or how often he showed affection, or how clearly he expressed desire. It was about how little he needed to be wanted, how grounded he was in his own silence, how detached he stayed from outcomes, yet fully present when he chose to be emotionally unavailable, number just emotionally sovereign. And that is rare, because most people live in reaction. They love from lack, they give to be validated, they attach to feel whole. But the ones who don't, the ones who love without losing themselves, who speak without explaining, who connect without collapsing, they hold all the power, not because they demand it, but because they no longer depend on it. And that's the final truth. Attraction isn't built in noise. It's built in restraint, in what you don't give away, in what you don't explain, in what you don't need. Because real power is quiet. It doesn't seek permission. It doesn't perform. It just is. Now, if you want to go deeper, if you're ready to become emotionally unreachable, not to push people away, but to stand in a quiet control no one can shake, then watch the next video. Become emotionally unreachable, 5 Stoic tactics for quiet control. The power you're seeking is already within you. Let's unlock it silently.